Hey everybody, welcome back to When Creatives Thrive, a Create Baltimore podcast. I'm Stuart Rustin, and before we get started, remember to like, comment, and follow when and where you can. It really helps us to keep telling creative stories. On this episode, we feature Amanda Leigh Burnham, a visual artist based in Baltimore who makes drawings and large-scale site-specific installations, which are also drawings. Amanda's vivid, chaotic compositions incorporate a variety of materials, styles, and techniques, which result in three-dimensional collages that leap off the walls. This effect is somewhere between a comic book and a stage set. In 2025, Amanda was the recipient of the Sondheim Art Prize. This $30,000 jury prize is awarded each year through Create Baltimore in partnership with the Walters Art Museum to a visual artist or visual artist collaborators living and working in the Baltimore region. It targets makers who are poised for creative breakout. A graduate of Harvard University and Yale University, Burnham is now a professor of art at Towson University. Amanda, welcome to When Creatives Thrive. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
So first, I wanted to start with your background. Can you tell us about yourself and what was it that drew you to art as a young person?
That's a great question. I don't know if I remember ever starting to draw. I think, all kids draw, right? And it's just some kids stop. And I never stopped. I'm from Ohio originally. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. And I've been in Baltimore since 2007 and lived in a bunch of places in between. I've now been in Baltimore longer than anywhere I've lived, including where I was born. So that's kind of a wild realization for me. And it's great. I love Baltimore. I love feeling like I can legitimately call myself, from here. I would say that my interest in making art, I didn't think of being an artist as like a real job you could have.
Right.
Until really late in the game, like after college,
Really?
for sure. Oh, yeah. I just didn't know anyone who did that.
Yeah.
I knew people who were artful, who were creative, who made cool things, but I didn't really know anyone who that was their job or that was a central part of how they provided for themselves. So I think, I remember being, 7 or 8 and thinking, oh, I want to make like Disney movies,
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I wanted maybe I'll be an animator or maybe I'll be a cartoonist, like maybe I'll Sunday Funnies kind of situation. And that was the kind of art I liked. I loved Mad Magazine. I loved all cartoons, I was very much an 80s kid. So it was still a thing that, Saturday morning cartoons were destination TV.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, and I was obsessed with Disney movies and stuff like that. So, not unlike a lot of kids. And I just love to draw. My brother and I, were aided and abetted by my mom because she would I don't know how she came up with it, but she had this pretty genius idea that I now try to replicate with my own kids, which is just to stock up on lined notebooks when they were cheap right before school started every year, and get hundreds of them and just when we were bored or we were bothering her or we were in the back of the car and she had to run errands or whatever, she'd give us notebooks and ballpoint pens. And so I remember walking around always with a notebook and a ballpoint pen at all times, me and my brother. And so we just drew constantly. And we would relate to each other that way.
Yeah.
We would hang out in my brother's room and just draw narratives and talk them out to each other. And it was a really central part of my childhood. But yeah, I never thought of it as a job I could do until, late in college. And I started to meet younger faculty members who had like careers,
Yeah.
like they showed in galleries and stuff. And like I went to New York for the first time when I was like a junior in college, and was like, what, galleries are a thing?
Yeah.
Like these are living people, this sounds so dumb, but I just didn't get it. Like I was very unaware of all of that until kind of late in the game. And then when I realized that was maybe something I could aim for, then I got excited about it.
What about your passion for running? I know that this may seem like a different topic, but you've at least expressed some passion for it while we've gotten to know each other. How does running fit into this equation?
It's so many things to me. It's I started doing it. Goes back to high school as well. I ran like cross country and track and stuff in high school, and at that time in my life, it was just I wasn't passionate about it. It was just like, oh, I feel like I should do a sport, and I never did team sports early enough to be able to do those. It was like, oh, hey, can I play basketball? And they're like, no, you don't know what you're doing. So I was like, well, I guess it's running. And then I gave it up because I didn't love it. At a certain point, shortly after I moved to Baltimore, actually, and I was in that adjustment period of like not knowing anyone, being kind of lonely and isolated, and having left, the life I'd established for myself, in grad school and previously. Like I left a lot of people and was starting the new job and feeling kind of disoriented and sad. And I just needed to figure out how I could relate to this new place that I was in and make a space for myself. And it was a thing I simply started to do because I didn't want to pay for a gym. And
I feel you.
It seemed very accessible. So I started running, but what it did for me was it actually, it got me really intimately familiar with the city. I was living in Mount Vernon, which was a great place to land for sure, as a new resident, because I could walk everywhere anyways, but, and see a lot of things. But, as I started doing this daily running practice, I started to really get excited about doing it every day. Not because I was, being healthy or losing weight or whatever, all the reasons people do those things, but because I didn't know what I'd see. I was like, oh, well, like, I never would like plan routes. Like I would just leave and just sort of like choose your own adventure. Like,
really?
Yeah. I was like, okay, like what about this way? What'll I see if I go here?
Ah.
Yeah, exactly. So I just started using it without any kind of plan as a way to like explore. And that kind of kicked off everything for me.
Really?
Yeah, because my work wasn't at all about the cities. The work that I made, like coming out of grad school and moving here, was really different, and it was really unfocused. And I was feeling kind of lost at that point. Like, you get into grad school and you go to grad school, and I think for a lot of people, it certainly was this way for me. You hear so much feedback from so many people, and it's all very impassioned, often for reasons that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And it's confusing, and it's hard to parse. And so I was super lost all through grad school. I felt like, major imposter syndrome, because I was like, how, like I saw my classmates around me like having really focused visions, and I was just like casting about for anything, trying to figure out like what I even wanted to do. And so then, I start doing this thing that was really just about trying to be healthy and not pay for a gym.
Yeah.
And it evolved into like, oh, I'm deeply fascinated. Like, this is a cool place. There's so much weird stuff here. Like, there's just so, like, I just got really, really, really into it. And that led to me wanting to draw the things I was seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would start like using the run as a way to sort of spec out things that I wanted to come back to later and draw. And then it expanded to, it wasn't just when I was running. I started keeping like art supplies in my car, and like, if I was driving on the way to work and I had a little time and I saw something cool, I'd stop and draw it, And it wasn't installation at that point. The installation came later because, what I was doing formally at that point was extremely like not groundbreaking. It was just like draw things that I saw with ink. But the more and more I did that, the more and more I was craving a way to draw those things in a way that emphasized just how exciting they were to me. And the reason it was exciting to me wasn't primarily visual. I mean, it was part of it, like seeing cool things, but it was also just like, I would run a route and maybe run it a week later and it was different, like, oh, that building got knocked down, or somebody created something out of a space that was unexpected, or, or there's a new mural, or there's people hanging out here now. And they weren't before, like I was here in the evening before and it was dead. And now I'm here in the morning and there's like a party happening, just I was noticing as much the sort of activities surrounding the spaces and the noisiness, this sort of joyful kind of chaotic energy.
Do you think there's something about not choosing a set route, not getting into like a cyclical pattern of thinking, like this sort of new freedom that you encountered? Like, does that also find its way into the work? Is it like this sort of awakening where you can go and do and see and be kind of anything that you want? Seems like that's a pretty formative kind of experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, my work is that way too. Like, I mean, so, the installation practice certainly evolved out of this desire to make drawings that felt really engaging and energetic and touching on energies that weren't just visual, and to sort of speak to this transformation and chaos, right? But also, even as I feel like that practice, that installation practice has sort of become the formal mode that I'm primarily known for at this point.
Right.
I've never stopped wanting to make all kinds of things. I still make, plein air ink drawings all the time. I love to make fussy little weird observational things, and I like comics, I like books, I like painting. I've never felt real comfortable just doing one stylistic thing. And yeah, so I think that that's something about me, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's certainly a thing. And it certainly is, I think, why I would, not just pick a route and stick to it, or people run to zone out, and I don't actually. I it's an exploration, or it started to be that for me. So I see some mirroring there for sure. And at this point I've been doing it. It became super essential to me for that reason. It also became essential to me because, as it does for many people, it quiets anxieties.
Sure.
It's meditative. I liked the way I could focus on something interesting, and as I would approach it, it would be recontextualized slowly, so here's something I'm looking at. It's a piece of graffiti, or it's a fence, or it's a TV pole, or whatever it is that it catches my eye. I'm looking at it as a form, and as I approach it, I'm seeing it. Now it's next to that building. Now it's next to that cloud. Now there's a bird. Now there's this. And so it's like this
The perspective shifts.
This unspooling of like compositional situation. And that would, I would just start to think about drawing all the time, and just start to think about how I could place that within something. And I mean, I definitely, now that I'm talking about that, I think the way that I like to draw things and pieces and put them together and then disassemble them and put them together again it relates to that.
Well, that's a super unique part of your practice as well. And I was hoping you could take us sort of behind the scenes of what an installation looks like, but then also like just the style of art that you said that you're becoming more and more known for. Like that's kind of unique as well. Yeah, can you tell us about that installation process and then what those pieces, for those who haven't necessarily been able to see your work yet, like what do they end up looking like when they go up in a space like the Walters?
Yeah, so the practice that I'm about to describe has evolved in some different directions very recently. But for a long time, it was about understanding this area surrounding wherever I was making a piece, walking, running, looking at things around there and collecting, And by collecting, I mean to draw later from memory, sometimes taking photos, sometimes coming back to make a drawing so I could recall the details I wanted to get into the piece, whatever. But collecting just details from the environment surrounding the space, bringing them back to my workspace, and then taking like these big rolls of paper. I use, it's not especially fancy paper. It's like, Strathmore 400 series, rolls of drawing, sort of multi-purpose drawing paper and stretching them across the floor. I like painting horizontally. I don't like hanging things on a wall. So floors, tables, and then just using paint. And color has come into my work over time, but I've always been really drawn to black and white. And so initially when I was making these things, it was just black line that I would achieve with either like black gesso or black acrylic paint and a brush, and making these sort of gestural line drawings, my take on these elements that I was noticing and discovering, and just trying to just almost amass like a painter's palette of bits. My goal in any case would be to have just piles and piles and piles, like hundreds of choices, like so many choices. Because what's fun is you have these little images fleeting things that caught my attention, that I got excited about, or that I wanted to represent. And then being able to put them together, and the surprise, right? I mean, and it's not entirely surprising. I mean, at this point I do know like some of the things that could happen, but they're always in that moment of like just, compressed decision making.
Yeah.
It's a big wall and it's hundreds of options.
Yeah, and you're on a timeline.
And it's a day, or
Yeah.
it's 2 days, or it's a week, and it's really generally never much more than that. So you can't really deliberate forever. You can make a decision and evaluate it and make another decision and just keep making decisions, right? Additive, sometimes subtractive, but more than anything, I don't love subtracting as much as I love, overlaying, because it reminds me of how things get, sort of reinscribed in city spaces, right? Like it's never, I mean, things do get torn down, but more frequently they get repurposed and painted over and built on top of and kludged, in these really bizarre and interesting ways. And so for me, like having like 10 layers of like decisions that are visible, and like you don't see what those prior decisions are necessarily, but
but
I know, and you know that they're there.
Yeah.
I just became super addicted to like the fun of that,
It's kind of like a race in a way, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
There's this starting gun and you've got a finish line.
Yeah, the drawing the things and making the palette, the piling up the pieces, the research of walking around and looking at things, that's the preparation.
Right.
It's like I can be successful at this if I put that work in.
Sure.
And then when the day is there, I have to be ready to do it. And I have to be ready to make decisions on the fly, and I have to be ready to make other decisions if unexpected things happen, which
There's
always
like an agility or sort of like a, a responsiveness that,
And it is very physical, actually, because you're going up and down ladders. And so, it does parallel like training for a race, interestingly. I would like working hard to prepare myself to do something, and then the thing just has to be done in that moment.
Yeah. I was also really surprised to see some of the textures and like work that you do with paper, there's folding involved, there's like scissors, there's cutting, there's tape, and all of these colors that are sort of coming together. Can you tell us more about the show at the Walters for the Sondheim Art Prize and maybe some of the ideas that you were thinking about as that work was coming together?
Yeah, I got the news about being in this show and having the opportunity to do this show in late January of this year. So if you think back to what was going on in late January,
2025,
it was an interesting time, and an anxious time, and an uncertain time, and not that that's new. I mean, it's just one moment in a cavalcade of things that have seemed to be happening on an ever accelerating basis, politically and socially for a long time, right? But what was on my mind was that, and what was on a lot of people's minds at the same time was just like, what do I do now? Like, what agency do I have as an individual person in this massive, systemic, driven reality that we exist in, where things are seemingly happening every day that are terrifying, worrisome, potentially really a problem for not only me, but like people, everyone I know in like my daily life.
Yeah.
And feeling kind of like powerless, but I have to do something, right? Like what can one do? And that's ongoing, of course. But I realized like I wanted to make work about that feeling of like trying to have agency as a human in this chaos, right? Of ever-changing circumstances. And that became the goal at that point. I was like, okay, I need to make new work for this show. I'm not going to show things I've shown in the past, which is funny because it was like a 2.5 month timeline. So kudos to the curators who walked into my mostly not empty studio, but my studio that didn't have any finished work in it whatsoever in early February. And they're like, so what do you want to show? And I'm like, well, it's completely in my head right now, but I can see it, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's going to be. And it's going to be these, totemic, huge, larger than life compositions that are figures, that are single figures or two figures, but like not the crowd. It's going to be, the focus is individuals and in individual women. I wanted to sort of, I wanted these to be women, and I wanted them to, it wanted to enact sort of, a metaphor that was a dynamic between figure and ground. Right. So it's a figure. It's a hopefully a figure that feels capable and strong, but also struggling. Right. And the struggle is with the setting that they're in.
Yeah.
It's super Baroque, it's oppressive, it's loud, it's coming at you from all directions, it's weaving around, it's curling up legs, it's punching you in the side, it's doing all of these things. It's abusive, it's acting on the figure, and the figure is acting back.
I wondered sometimes when I walked into that space how the framed work came about. Like it seemed like it was similar, like it was informed by the larger work that maybe was more like eye-catching, but it also in some ways seemed like it maybe fit in a traditional sort of gallery space or museum space because it was framed and sort of fit that mold. So I thought it was kind of interesting too that these like larger forms could also then be transferred into smaller, I don't know, maybe more museum appropriate, like in quotation marks kind of thing. Was that ever something that you were considering, or was that...
It wasn't so much of the idea of like, oh, here is something that is in a frame and like you could sell it or you could have it and it's more normative. It is more normative. It was more about the opportunity to just spend infinite time with it if I wanted to, I mean, for as much advantage as I see in having timeline, a deadline,
Yeah.
and that's still there. I still had to finish it by a certain point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
like like the somewhat smaller scale enabled me to weave things, details into these things that I wouldn't be able to do at a larger scale.
Okay.
And so that became kind of the appeal. Like,
Okay.
but in prior attempts at this sort of thing, I'd always felt like it's too tame. It's not enough of the energy that I like to have. I love that, like, just churned up, chaotic, extremely intense energy. And I wanted them to have that too.
Yeah. Do you think that framed work will ultimately be something that you'll really cherish because it was a part of this process and that you've been able to hang on to post exhibit?
Yeah, I like that it can continue to have a life outside of, like, it's, it still exists. Like the larger stuff only exists
Right.
when it's being exhibited, and when it comes down, it's just, that's it. The pieces still exist, and I have and will reuse them. They will become something else. I love that too, but there's something different about a piece that is, it's, once it's in a frame, I'm not going to keep adding stuff to it.
Yeah.
Now it's done, right? But now it gets to have a life.
Yeah.
Its own life.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic.
Okay, so let's talk about after receiving the award.
And also, as you've moved into this new studio space
Mm-hmm.
post receiving the prize, like, I think you've also had the chance to sort of walk down memory lane to a certain extent and kind of revisit some things that maybe you haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, it's great. Like, moving into the new space has been super transformative in so many ways. I've only really been there a month or so.
Yeah.
So it's still happening. But, as you know, I worked out of my home for, 20 years. And that was very intentional. It was like, I do have a day job. I have little kids, for a long time, and still, like, my time it's precious, it's limited, and that's true of everyone. I mean, everyone's time is like that. But for me, it was like, I need to work out of my house because I need to have access whenever I have a moment. Like, I can't countenance, like, a 20-minute drive somewhere to do work if I have if I have an hour, like,
I know.
if it's like 9 p.m., the kids are asleep, I'm feeling an energy to do something, I can't have to go somewhere, like, it has to just be right there. So that was the decision. And of course the drawback is space. And I told myself, if the Sondheim came through, I was like, I'm going to find a way to have an outside space, because it was clear to me from making the work for this show that if that dynamic, which I was so excited about, like, it was so exciting to make that work, as stressful as it kind of was,
Right.
and as much as it took over my whole house and life, it was such a push and such a crazy thing to get it to happen. That wasn't sustainable. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't keep doing that. Like, it was fine for this one thing, but, like, for it to continue to grow, I needed a space. So, I told myself I'd figure that out. And I was delighted to happen upon an opportunity in this space that was right down the street from my house, that it's in Waverly. It's super accessible to me. And it's in a building with, like, lovely, wonderful people that I've known for years. And
Yeah, it's a great space.
Oh, it's a dream.
Yeah, really nice.
It's a dream. So, anyways, being in that space, so yeah, you saw me the day I started unpacking, and it was great to just sort of excavate all this stuff I'd been apparently keeping in my home space, but, like, I don't even know how it accordioned out, like, in such an insane way.
It was impressive to see, though.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Just being able to, because I know what your work is now, and being able to see some of the things that you were thinking about. And
Yeah.
it was also kind of inspirational for me to hear you say, hey, I'm thinking about still using some of this stuff and
yeah.
taking it into new work, instead of being like, oh yeah, that was me 5, 10, 15, however many years ago. Like, man, that was old me, the new me does whatever. You're like, I'm going to recycle this. I'm going to make this into something new.
I remember Jackie Malad gave a talk at Towson. She's visited my class before, and I think said this in that context too. But like, she gave a talk at Towson a couple of years ago and said something that has resonated with me so much, and I think about all the time about how like she sort of doesn't consider her work ever done. Unless it gets framed and sold, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's an artificial time, ending point. But other than that, it's alive, and it's always open to being amended, reconsidered, and I really love that. And I kind of do a similar thing with, anything I make. I've been able to contextualize or frame things I make as it's never failure. It's just a thing that I don't know quite what to do with yet. So I mean, it's probably not great from a hoarding standpoint, but I keep stuff. I do. I like, if I make a drawing, even if it's like weird and awkward or bad in some way, or just a strange thought, or I just keep it, because if I'm ever lost or not sure what a next move is, the best thing I can do is just dive into my archive and be like, what? It's like kind of like wandering around a city, like what's speaking to me today.
Yeah, it's great that you're not judging it. You're just archiving it. You're just saying
stuff.
Maybe we'll check this out later, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's another good thing about being prolific, is that like you can start to not really have any preciousness about anything.
Yeah,
and it's preciousness in my practices is anathema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you have a day job.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I know you're a professor at Towson.
Yes.
And I'm curious how you keep yourself going, your own artistic practice, when you're also mentoring and trying to support others. How does that balance work out for you?
Well, it's great because it's so generative. Like, I mean, yes, it's tiring, because when you teach, if you're teaching well, you're reorienting yourself every second. Because let's say you have 18 students in a classroom, they're all on their own journey.
Yeah.
And they have their own they approach things from a very individual point of view. Their problems are individual to them. What they need in any given moment is totally distinct from what anyone else needs in any given moment. So you can have a plan, but it's going to change, because if you're responsive to your students, it's going to have to. There's no one size fits all. And I find that very exciting, but it's a lot, it's
a lot.
You're on for
in a
very, very specific way, for a chunk of time. And then, so, I'll teach, and I'm like, I could just sleep for a year,
I'm sure it can fry you.
Yes. And it's exciting because the energy of art students, whether it's freshmen in foundations, I am a foundations coordinator, but I also teach in the MFA program, and I work with grad students. It's infectious.
Yeah.
Like, I learn from them. So it's such a cliche, but it's so true. You learn as much from your students as hopefully they learn from you.
Yeah. What was the reception like when your students and when faculty found out that you won the Sondheim Art Prize?
It was really fun because so the whole thing happened while I was teaching. It was in the spring, and I always teach a BFA project in the spring for painting, drawing, and printmaking students. And the part of the class is talking about how to have a successful life as an artist, and in terms not only of sustaining your work and keeping the ideas fresh and the wheels turning, but also in terms of like getting money.
Yeah.
Having a job.
Yeah.
How do you figure out a workflow that's good for you? How do you find a job that's going to allow you to be creative and feed it ideally, as opposed to draining you? And how do you so one of the assignments that we do, the very first assignment I give them is to write a grant application. And we, for the last couple of years, we've been really lucky to be able to partner with an entity on campus that does grant funding for student research, right? So that they create this grant proposal that mirrors the type of grant that might exist in the world.
Yeah.
And then they actually do get to get some money. Like, it's they submit it, and we have an independent panel of other faculty and artists on campus who evaluate their proposals and grant funds to them for use in their projects, right? And so we start that conversation, and I always talk to them about my own experiences, and I'm like, oh yeah, and there's the moment where I talk about all the types of grants that exist in their world that they can start thinking about applying for when they're graduated. And Sondheim's one of them, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I got real lucky this year, and I'm actually in the running for this. And so they were aware of it because we talked about it as like a case study almost in the classroom. Like, this is one of the many types of opportunities that you can have, and this is what it looks like. This is how you get through it. This is how you.
Do you talk at all about your history with the Sondheim? Because I know you applied multiple times and were a semifinalist multiple times before not just becoming a finalist, but also then the winner of the prize. Like, there's a certain resiliency, I think, that it takes to get told no, but then show up again. Sort of like running in a way. Yeah. You just get up,
keep going,
and keep going. Like, is that something that you try to give to your students?
Gosh, absolutely. That's like the number one thing that's going to determine your success in a creative field is just being able to not take it personally. And it shouldn't be personal. Like, there's hundreds, thousands, millions of insanely talented people in the world, making incredibly cool things. If you've ever, and I've had the, great opportunity to sit on the other side and at various points, and to see that it's never an easy decision. No. Right. So there's that. But I hammer this all the time in my class. Like, if you apply to 100 things, if you get one of them, that's amazing. And I show them my stats. I'm like, listen, after I got it, I was like, hey guys, I got it. But also, like, here's all the times that I didn't get it, and I try to be transparent with them and talk to them about how many rejections I've received, how many things haven't panned out, and how that's not a bad thing. That's just a thing, and it's fine. And it's, I think it's so important.
I know you feel strongly about independent funding for artists because we've talked about it in the past.
Yeah.
What do you think it affords a local community when we have those sort of opportunities to let artists do art for the sake of art? Yeah,
I mean, we're in a moment where, of course, where the economy is horrendous, and that's translating very noticeably in the commercial art world, right? Like, and the art world is commercial, like it or not, galleries closing, or becoming, non-brick and mortar operations, sales are down, people are struggling. And so that really highlights how important it is for there to be ways for artists to continue without that apparatus, because it's not dependable, even in the best of times. Probably most artists are not, feeding themselves by selling their work. And if there's too much of a pressure to make things so that you can sell them, and and that's the way you're able to keep going, it's gonna be a problem, because I just find that I personally can't function thinking about things as objects to sell.
Yeah. They become less like a commodity and more just a form of expression, a form of creativity. It seems kind of like more pure to me to do it for those reasons.
Well, and I also don't want to make it sound like I'm, throwing shade at people who sell their work, a lot, and that's their primary thing. Like, great. Like, I also think it's great that people, collect work and acquire it and live with it. I think it's all great. It's just that it's so erratic. That can be a piece of it, but there need to be options for people when things are running fallow with the commercial art world. There need to be, and not everyone's going to love teaching, and that's fine too. You have to have, your personality has to be geared in whatever way it needs to be geared for that to be a fruitful enterprise for you, and so that's why it's so important that there be opportunities for people. And, if to the people that sort of say, well, like, do we need art? I mean, I would liken it to like primary science research, right? Like, there are people who are studying, fruit flies or whatever, and it doesn't have a direct application, perhaps, that you can see very clearly to like a medicine we're developing or a very specific human-centered problem we're solving. But you can't get to those things without the thing that is many, 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 many steps removed, that's just about a curiosity, an inquiry, an understanding of the world. Like, anything good in medicine or technology that we see as indispensable, starts with just somebody being curious. So if you like culture at all, even if the culture you're most drawn to is the most commercial sort of culture, an album you buy, or I don't know, none of that happens without just people generally being curious and creative.
Agreed. The last thing I wanted to talk about is something that feels kind of personal to me too. I was there when the Sondheim Award was given to you, and I know your family was there, your husband, your two children. I sometimes think about my own existence as a father with a small child and maybe what she will eventually think of me, because I have sort of a maybe more non-traditional career path where I'm running around with a camera sometimes, and Dad's a podcaster. Like, what did it mean to have your family in the audience when you walked up and grabbed that prize? And do you think it maybe shifted the way that your kids think about you in any way?
Definitely. There have been times I've felt like my kids see me primarily as like the person who makes dinner, the person who cleans the house, the person who's making sure that all these very sort of banal but necessary things are done. And that's important, but it's like, I want them to be able to take part in all of this other stuff that gives me joy. And I love drawing with them. I draw with them all the time. But get them being there, I think it did really kind of click for them. They're like, oh, this is actually what mommy does.
Yes.
Oh, like they got it. And which is a real gift, because as I told you, I didn't get that was a thing when I was their age.
Yeah.
I didn't, like, they can say that they have an insight about the possibilities that are before them as people that I didn't have.
Yeah.
When I was their age. So that really means a lot to me. But it also just means a lot to me that they are able to understand through that this is who I am, that I am a full person beyond just, the sort of day to day, keeping the house going, keeping everyone's lives running. I appreciate that they can see me that way.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations again on winning the Sondheim Art Prize 2025.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see where everything takes you.
Yeah, me too. Who knows, but I'm excited.
Thanks so much to Amanda for joining the podcast, and thanks to you for listening. Remember, if you are a creative person with a story to share, reach out to me at srustin@promotioninarts.org to be featured on the podcast. And as always, when creatives thrive, we all rise.